we're here at Gunner's Firearms with Maggie again. Maggie, it's always a pleasure to see you.
It's great to see you too, Mark. How have you been?
I've been really good, really good. Thank you for asking.
So glad to hear it.
Hey, we were talking about women living alone and the best guns for them and kind of what they should look for. And I'm really glad we had that conversation, but we touched on it briefly in that conversation, and I'll put the link to the video here, but there's also the worst guns for women living alone too.
Yes.
And it's not, you know, it's not like this gun is the worst gun for women, but there are definitely some bad ideas for women living alone. So do you mind if I kind of talk through like what goes real, you know, for women living alone, they're looking for that first gun. What are some bad scenarios that you got there? Oh gosh, the worst possible scenario that immediately comes to mind is the well-meaning family members and friends that bring you a firearm that you have no earthly idea how to operate it. Whether it's a shotgun, whether it's a rifle, whether it's a handgun, but they're like, here, I've brought this for you. This is how you load it. They spend like 2 or 3 minutes right there, you know, going over it with you, and you're like, oh, thanks. This is great. This is fantastic. Okay, I'm never going to use it. So then it sits in the closet, or it sits under something in a safe somewhere, and they never take it out until that one time they might need to use it. They have no clue what they're doing with it. They've never practiced after that one, hey, here it is. I'm bringing you a firearm and you're gonna use this and you should be able to do it without any practice. I hate that because the worst possible thing that could happen is that if you're home and you don't know how to operate it, maybe the person that is invading your home does know how to operate it and takes it from you and holds you at gunpoint with your own gun. I'm not saying that's going to happen to everybody, but there are instances in which it has happened where people have been held at gunpoint with their own by their own guns that they have no clue how to use. So, or maybe they didn't even know was there because someone had dropped it off, or a relative that had passed away, a spouse that had passed away had left it there and they didn't know about it. Well, somebody else found it first before they did. So that is quite possibly the worst firearm scenario to have. And I sincerely hope that doesn't happen. I couldn't imagine how common that is too, that it's so incredibly common, because a lot of people will go out and buy guns for their loved one, for their mother or their daughter or their
sister,
their spouse,
their aunt,
their sister, their girlfriend, that kind of thing, because they don't, you know, they're living alone, they're by themselves, they don't want them.
Yeah,
you need to be protected. So here, take this gun, or they'll make recommendations that, you know, you don't listen to what that salesperson. You need this. This is the gun you want.
The worst particular gun, the one without a safety, the one that is always consistently and constantly recommended to first-time firearm owners. Buy a Glock.
Buy a Glock. You gotta have a Glock. Don't buy anything but a Glock.
Just put your blinders on. Don't look at anything unless it says Glock. This is what you want.
Now, we did a video on this, but what was the #1 returned handgun in the last 2 years?
Firearms without safeties. Glock.
But a lot of that was because of just... I guess what I hear, if I understand this correctly, what I'm hearing you saying is that the problem is that people are saying you want this thing, and then they don't have the opportunity to put the other thousands of options in their hand and say, well, what's best for me? Just because it's best for my brother Hank doesn't necessarily mean it's what's best for me.
I've got friends in military and law enforcement, and this is the only gun they recommend and the only gun they practice and train with. There's the key right there. They have practiced and they have trained with it. And I guarantee the first gun that was put into their hands was not a Glock. At some point, it probably was a rinky-dink little 22, either,
like
you know,
most people.
yeah, a single action revolver, a rifle, you know, something in a small caliber where you get used to the noise first and you don't have the kick of that recoil to it. And they almost always have a safety on it. When you are teaching a first-time firearm owner, you know, what to do, or the first time anybody gets their hands on a gun, whether they own firearms or not, you're going to teach them ones that have safeties on it. And you go, okay, here's the safety, this is this, you know, you go over all the features, here's how you load it, this is the trigger, do not touch the trigger until you are aligned with your target and you know what is behind that target. There's a lot of steps and rules first. Just like the first time that you get behind the wheel of a car, your instructor doesn't say, okay, we're hitting the interstate highway, get ready, we're gonna merge into traffic.
Right, I'm glad you said that.
No.
You start off slow.
No, you...
Parking lot maybe.
Yes.
An empty parking lot.
An empty parking lot or something like that, and you're like, okay, don't cross any of the yellow lines, practice stopping, practice starting. If you're in a manual transmission, practice on hills, you know, so you use baby steps. You don't just go.
And guns like Glock, you know, Glock was specifically made for the Austrian military trials. I mean, it was made for the Austrian, like he said, I'm going to make a gun for the Austrian military trials. So it's a fantastic firearm for the military. It's a fantastic firearm for the police. It's a fantastic firearm for an experienced concealed carrier. It's a terrible gun for a first-time gun owner, I believe. You know,
it wouldn't be my very first option for a first-time firearm owner. Not especially if they have minimal to no experience handling firearms on a regular basis. I'm not talking like, hey, I go to the range once every year or once every 2 years with my family or my friends. I'm talking, you're going to need some serious range time, at least once a month.
What's the best advice you can give to a woman living alone that comes in and said, my uncle said all I want to look at is Glocks?
Go to the range, play with the Glock. Find a reputable range that will let you rent firearms and test fire them and try that Glock. Try it first. Have your uncle
You may love it.
Take you to the range. You may love it, and you may have enough experience with firearms that it's not going to be an issue for a gun that doesn't have any external safeties. Not saying that Glocks don't have safeties. They do have. They have internal safeties, but
it's just more about. It's the awareness of your trigger control. It's the awareness of reholstering. There's so many things that a new gun owner is just simply not aware of that you have to be aware of if you are the owner of a Glock or a gun like a
any semi-auto. But let's talk about the first thing that new firearm owners want to do when you say, okay, now let's see if you can pull the slide back. So the first thing they do is that their finger goes right through there all the way that they can. They squeeze that trigger. Oh, did you already hear that click?
So I was looking at that equalizer because we broke that out in the last video, and it kind of reminds me, you know, it's always obviously like the Shield Easy, but it kind of reminds me, you know, with the grip safety, the manual safety. I even question, you know, if a person if it's not too complicated for a new gun owner.
If you want too complicated for a new firearm owner,
1911 maybe, you know, like but I could be wrong.
In
the end, it's really just try it. Like, make sure it's for you. Don't heed the advice. I mean, listen to advice.
Yeah.
But just know that you're a different person.
Yeah, you really are.
You're not that person.
My first advice for anyone new to guns, checking them out firsthand at the counter, keep the booger hook off the bang switch. So, like, it amazes me how many people will grip the gun and then wrap their whole hand through there, and then when they pull that slide back, you hear that click. They've pulled the trigger when they're pulling the slide back,
And there are so many things that can go wrong right there. If your hand slips off that slide, you've pulled the trigger, you have just destroyed whatever is beyond the end of that barrel. And if your hand is in the way, I mean...
I had a friend who shot himself in the hand that way. Yeah.
I've seen it happen firsthand. Yeah. I have not... Okay, actually, I've seen it happen on cameras. So it just... And...
So really the worst thing that a woman living alone could do is really just kind of really not know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's really about the education, because I think the problem with saying to a person you only want this thing is now they're not going to become educated. They're not going to watch YouTube videos. They're not going to do the research. They're not going to go into the gun store multiple times or try multiple guns. They're going to be like, well, I want this thing, and then I'm just going to get it in the box, and I'm going to take it home, and I don't know how to use it. So it's really about
you've narrowed down the
education.
The search pool so small that they don't realize that they have a broader pool to select from, and that they have more options than just that one thing.
Kind of like telling a woman, oh, you need some shoes for a night out. You don't want anything but Uggs. When there's clearly 100,000 shoes to choose from. Which is the analogy my wife always gives.
She's not wrong. She is so not wrong. You have options. Please explore them. But, oh my God.
They're so comfortable. You don't want anything but Uggs.
My motorcycle boots are way comfier than any pair of Uggs I've tried on. So I guess I'm not that target demographic there. Same for Glock. I don't think I am. I might be their target demographic, but maybe I just don't know it yet. Maybe I just don't. I haven't had enough practice and experience to appreciate them the way they should be. I appreciate a lot.
I like them. They seem to be indestructible. They're very they're accurate. And
heard you did some.
The thing is that I just wouldn't recommend them to a new gun owner. Is the only thing.
I heard you were doing some torture testing on some Glocks, by the way.
At the bottom of the lake, freezing in a black ice. We're trying. It still runs great.
So, have you tried that with any other brand besides Glock?
I was going to go a different direction next.
I was going to say, have you? I was
going to try Taurus. Yeah, what were you going to recommend?
Oh, I was going to say maybe try a 1911.
I thought about it. I thought about the 1911.
I mean, the problem with throwing something that's all metal into a lake is probably going to be rust issues. So I don't know how thoroughly you'd have to clean it.
I've cleaned the Glock pretty thoroughly so far. So.
Yeah, I've actually had people walk into the store going, well, I cleaned my Glock by putting it in the dishwasher. And I'm like, you are absolutely joking, right? Oh, no, I'll just slap that damn puppy in the dishwasher and away it goes. And I'm like, okay, all right. Well, if it works for you, but I would not recommend that to anyone else. And I do not have long-term studies on what that would do to your dishwasher or to your gun. These aren't dishes and plates. These weren't meant to go in a dishwasher. So
Maggie, gosh, thank you so much. We always appreciate you, and especially this particular topic, because Laurel been asking me to do a video on this for quite a while, and I just said, well, I don't feel like I'm necessarily the right person to have this conversation. So I really appreciate you doing this. Being an experienced gun salesman and a woman. So we thank you for all your insight.
Hi, cool beans.
Thank
Glad
you
I could help.
Awesome.
You are so welcome, and we'll see everybody next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.